Call this meeting to order. So at this time, moved by Councillor Hoyle, seconded by Councillor Danch, that council rise and reconvene from closed session at 6:30 p.m. with report. Item 4.1, the following closed session minutes be approved. Regular council meeting closed session of February 10th and regular council meeting closed session February 24th, both of 2026. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. At this time, if you are able, please stand for our national anthem, followed by our land acknowledgement.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
The Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations such as the Hattaway-Wendourok, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The city of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
So just for the public, we do have two addendums this evening to our agenda. There's addition of two delegations, and we have an amendment to the schedule for report number 2026-07. So at this time, we go to our delegations. Our first delegation is from Gary Gaverluck. Gary? Just remind the delegation, state your name and full address, and that you have 10 minutes.
Okay, my name is Gary Gaverluck. I live at 21 Woodside Drive, Port Colborne. I'm here on behalf of myself and the Port Colborne Health Coalition. Mayor Steele, members of council, Regional Councillor Badaway, and fellow citizens, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the agenda correspondence item. First, I'm going to start out with a prequel to the Niagara Region Committee of the Whole meeting on the 26th of February. At the February 26th Region of Niagara Committee of the Whole meeting, the infamous amalgamation meeting, Chair Bob Gale was immediately stopped during his opening remarks by a point of order. The point of order was raised by Fort Erie Mayor Wayne Redekop, stating the chair was taking a position. As chair, he must remain impartial. Mayor Redekop challenged the issue, which resulted in a lengthy discussion. After this discussion, including conciliation from the region's legal team, it was confirmed that the chair could not continue with his opinionated opening remarks. As a result, a motion was made to the effect that the chairman, Bob Gale, must desist. It is important to note that Chairman Gale had difficulty interpreting the motion as he announced the taking of vote. An in-camera vote was held, with the motion being approved by 2/3 of the regional council. Those voting in favor of Chair Gale were Diodati, Campion, Greenwood, Junkin, Olson, Secord, and Cisco. Shortly thereafter, the chairman's integrity was questioned by Councillor Ip. Councillor Ip forcefully demanded to know why a substantial stack of letters from constituents sent to the region had not been placed on the agenda for this meeting. Gale denied having any knowledge that he or staff had received them. After further discussion, Gale said he would take this up with his staff and that Councillor Ip should resend them to have them added. Councillor Bateman questioned the chair's authority. What authority do you have as chair to send letters? Gail responded, finally letting the cat out of the bag. I sent them to the mayors as instructed by the province. Bateman stated that she had sent a letter to the ombudsman. The discussion continued with each councillor giving the remarks as to being in favor of forced amalgamation or not. It was readily apparent that the majority were not in favor of the amalgamation. Mayor Steele shared that all citizens' responses received in Port Colborne have not been in favor of amalgamation, with the exception of one. Port's official response will be on the city website. We have been working on a water wastewater plan, and along with our roads, we can take them back and save our taxpayers money. In our opinion, Port Colborne could stand alone. We will continue to gather information from our community. Mayor Redekop stated that Fort Erie does not support amalgamation. He spoke of developing effective, efficient services for Fort Erie. Fort Erie can stand alone. Mayor Redekop questioned the motion passed earlier be amended. A slide of the amended motion was put up for viewing. A recorded vote was taken and the amended motion was passed. Those who voted not in favor: Campion, Diodati, Easton, Secord, Greenwood, Crater, Foster, and Encina. Port Colborne Regional Councillor Badaway supported Mayor Redekop's amended motion. He presented Chair Gale with lessons in the Municipal Act, Code of Conduct, or operational procedures, transparency, trust, and respect. He also noted that it was improper for the chair to have his chief of staff sitting beside him. He was told that if he wished to send letters to the province, henceforth, to make sure they are sent from Bob Gale, not as regional chair, unless they have gone through council. Mayor Badaway's final comment was, let's work together so that the Premier hears what Niagara wants, or expects, sorry. Now to the March 4th, Bob Gale's letter. Regional Chair Bob Gale's letter of March 4th, regional governance in Niagara to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Honorable Rob Fleck. The second letter is just another attempt to circumvent everything he was emphatically told not to do, as contained in the amended motion of the February 26th Committee of the Whole meeting. He has defiantly ignored the motion to desist by sending the second letter dated March 4th, despite the fact that he did not use the Niagara Region's official letterhead and signing this letter only as regional councillor, not regional chair Bob Gale. In all, we believe this to be a part of a very well-planned and orchestrated attempt by the Conservative provincial government through Bob Gale and his co-conspirators to undermine the authority of individual municipal governance by creating public outcry, mass confusion, anxiety to an extremely short timeline to plan municipal responses, and frustration related to the total disregard for public input. This is very disrespectful to everyone involved in our democratic process. Bob Gale later states, following my earlier correspondence on options for improving governance in the Niagara region, I received considerable feedback from regional councillors, local councils, and residents about both the process and the substance of the discussion. While I heard criticism with the unusual lack of advanced consultation, it was widely acknowledged that the current structure of 126 municipal elected officials across 12 municipalities and 31 members of region council is not lean, effective, and affordable as it should be. Yes, we can say that Bob Gale has received feedback from regional councillors, local councils, and some local residents. What he considers considerable is not. This should only be considered as information coming from a very small sample size. This is not a scientific analysis of the issue at hand, and it's lacking statistical data, just like Gale's first letter. As far as we know, Port Colborne was the first to announce the public engagement process on social media platforms, with other municipalities following behind. Public engagement is a vital key to the decision-making process or presenting a business case. Aligning with provincial priorities, March 4th, The mayors of Niagara present governance reform to Premier Ford. As stated in the mayor's present governance reform to Premier Ford, a unified approach to governance reform based on practical, evidence-based, and designed to align with provincial priorities while maintaining strong local representation and preserving the integrity of their communities is the most realistic approach, based on facts and not assumptions made by Bob Gale. Weighted voting based on population. At the regional level, the weighted voting scheme suggested by Bob Gale's letter is deliberate and by design. It will not promote local representation. It will not maintain the integrity of the communities with smaller populations, and it is clearly agreed to allow the three amigos, the mayors of St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Welland to dominate any and all regional decisions or funding, leaving Thorold, West Lincoln, Port Colborne, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Grimsby, Waynflete, Port Colborne, and Fort Erie, the poor sisters. In summary, Gale's last statement in his letter, you will find that this recommendation represents 74% of the population, is supported by several mayors. He goes on to list the mayors who attended a private meeting. Gale fails to mention that not all mayors were invited to this meeting, therefore skewing the results of this meeting in his favor, leaving 26% of the population not represented. In addition to all of the above, Gale attached the names of all the mayors who attended this meeting as if they all signed. Apparently, not all the mayors signed. It is our opinion that this letter, as written, are the opinions of Bob Gale and Bob Gale only. He wrote it. The opinions and comments are based on lies, misinformation, and assumptions. This Bob Gale scenario is just as dangerous as amalgamation. It is an attack on everything we live by on a day-to-day basis, compounding our community's health concerns. This is not a made-in-Niagara solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions to the presenter? Seeing none, thanks again.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Barb Butters. Yeah. Hi, Barb.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Go ahead.
Barb Butters, 1152 Weaver Road, Port Colborne. Good evening, Mayor Steele, councillor, staff, regional councillor Badaway, and residents. What a crazy whirlwind of events over the last couple of weeks, as if we all didn't have enough to do. So the topic of forced amalgamations, restructuring of regional systems, as well as municipalities, is in the forefront again. What we do next is critical if we are to be captains of our own fate. When Chair Gale chose the path to send his letter to the province regarding his vision of a new Niagara model, it was without advice, input from the public, or the sanction of the power of the regional council as an elected body. When he was reined in and instructed by motion to refrain from further actions, he sent out another letter to the province. As a citizen, he can do as he pleases, just like you and me. But when he flies in the face of clear instructions from our elected representatives at the region, his actions require a response. It requires a principled stand against rogue actions that, in my opinion, do not serve the public interest. I could speculate on whose interests they do serve, but I'm pretty sure that most of you have already done that. So what does serve the public interest? Number one, examination of regional systems and services and how or if they can be delivered better to save taxpayers' dollars is a start. Look at governance at the regional level. If there is change, who does it serve should be the question. So in that vein, I'm going to suggest the following. Mayors serve their communities first and foremost, because that's where their heart is. So no mayors at the region. Instead, elect 12 people, one per municipality, no weighted voting, 12 people who can look at the region as a whole, not 12 parts. What happens in our distinctive municipalities should be determined by our own people, not the region or the chair of the region or the province. We can best determine what we need and what will work for us. If we were to lose autonomy, our local voices diminished, or worse, lost altogether, then we have failed in democracy. Consolidation of power in the hands of the few, Chair Gale's latest new and improved model, of the three big cities holding the stacked deck to their ultimate advantage, means the other 9 smaller cities, towns, and a township lose. Does anyone here want to be dependent on the graces of the powerful? I do not. As well, our efforts for equitable, accessible healthcare and our UCC services would be effectively neutralized. We would not be a priority in such a lopsided arrangement. I will conclude with the fact that change can be scary, but not necessarily a bad thing. Taking this as an opportunity to pilot our own ship through these treacherous waters, we will find and implement good solutions. We will engage our citizens for input and share information. Decisions will be made on solid business plans and real data that supports them. Change guided by us. That makes sense. I want to just add my personal thanks for our representatives at the region, Mayor Steele, Regional Councillor Badaway. Your combined leadership at the region is very much appreciated. On behalf of Gary Gaverluck, myself, and the Port Colborne Health Coalition, I want to thank you all for your time. That's it.
Thank you, Barb. Council, questions to the presenter? Councillor Bruno.
Probably more a comment, but I wanted to wait till you were finished, Barb, but to Gary and you and everyone here. Thank you for the energizing of us on this issue. You're probably here for a twofer tonight, healthcare, and so amen to as if we only had one thing on our plate.
Exactly.
You now have this. But what I've observed and what I can tell you is that the same level of financial investment, specialists, time is going into this fight as it is about the healthcare. So one thing we'll all be able to agree on is we put everything but the kitchen sink into this. And I can say, and I don't know if the mayor or CAO wants to come, but the amount of research and time being done, whether it's comms, whether it's the CAO, whether it's staff, whether it's the mayor, whether he's here away on personal time, is really pretty amazing. And I think that some of the results of what will come out of some of these justifications, I mean, at the end of the day, what you worry about is you can be right, but sometimes right isn't all it's cracked up to be if it's just a political decision. But I think we're aware of that, but I just hope you'll still stay engaged because it's really important. I think we can win this
Have
thing.
you ever known me not to be?
No. Talking to the converted, right?
Thank you for your comments.
Further questions, comments? Good. Thanks, Barb. Appreciate it. The majority of Niagara mayors are speaking with one voice. On March the 4th, the mayors of Grimsby, Thorold, West Lincoln, Port Colborne, Fort Erie, Pelham, Niagara-on-the-Lake, and Wainfleet delivered a joint letter to Premier Doug Ford outlining a clear plan to modernize regional governance in Niagara. Together, we're advancing a practical agenda to reduce duplication, strengthen efficiency, address the number of elected officials, support long-term economic growth, keep taxes low for residents. This united approach focuses on delivering smarter, more streamlined services for the communities we serve. Additionally, I submitted a letter outlining the City of Port Colborne's position to the Province of Ontario regarding the ongoing discussion about municipal governance in Niagara. In a letter sent to Premier Ford this morning, I confirmed that Port Colborne does not support municipal amalgamation and instead supports a careful, evidence-based governance review. Port Colborne is a strong and independent community with real momentum. Forced amalgamation is neither necessary nor beneficial to our continued success. Our focus should be on practical solutions that improve efficiency and deliver better value for taxpayers. I highlighted the city's recent progress, including more than $2 billion in new investment and job creation, accelerated housing approvals, expanded childcare spaces, and local initiatives to improve healthcare access. The city is also working with the province to establish a municipally owned municipal services corporation to support water and wastewater servicing for the east side employment lands. The letter also highlights Port Colborne's strong economic momentum while noting that decades of research show municipal amalgamation does not produce cost savings and can reduce local responsiveness and accountability. We support a governance review that is grounded in strong analysis and meaningful consultation. Port Colborne is ready to work constructively with regional and provincial partners to find modern governance solutions that strengthen Niagara while protecting the progress our community has worked very hard to achieve. The city will continue participating in the Niagara governance review process approved by Niagara Regional Council and advocating for practical reforms that improve coordination, reduce duplication, and maintain strong local accountability. And residents can read the letters on our website, so they're all there. Following my letter to the province outlining the City of Port Colborne's position of potential changes to municipal governance in Niagara, the city is launching a public engagement process to ensure residents are part of the conversation. We invite our residents to share their feedback through a short survey or by attending one of the city's upcoming open houses. Input from residents, business owners, and community members will help inform council's position as regional governments discussions continue. And these are the ways to participate. We have our online survey, so just go to the City of Port Colborne's website. You'll find it right there. There's a paper survey available at City Hall, the Valley Health and Wellness Center, and the Port Colborne Public Library. We have we're beginning with two open houses this Thursday, March the 12th, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. right here at City Council Chambers. And then on Saturday, March the 14th, from 12 noon to 4 p.m. at the Valley Health and Wellness Center. The city will also gather feedback through small group discussions with several established community advisory groups. Feedback from all engagement opportunities will be compiled and presented to council at an upcoming public meeting. Learn more and take the survey at www.portcolborne.ca/governance. And each year, the City of Port Colborne celebrates the opening of the Welland Canal and the start of the shipping season by welcoming the captain of the first downbound vessel at a top hat ceremony. Join us this month to celebrate at the 2026 Top Hat Ceremony. This will take place Sunday, March the 22nd at 8 a.m. at Lock 8 Gateway Park. The Port Colborne Fair Trade Committee will be providing a pancake breakfast with hot chocolate, tea, and coffee. Again, more details at www.portcolborne.ca/Top Hat Ceremony. And due to the forecasted extreme cold weather earlier this winter during Sports Fest, and to ensure participant safety, the Port Colborne Polar Plunge in support of Special Olympics Ontario was rescheduled to March the 22nd at 1 p.m. at H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park Boat Ramp. Participants, teams, and spectators are still invited to take part in the coolest event of the year, and it is the coolest event, believe me. Whether you're plunging solo with friends or cheering from the shore, every icy dip helps support over 23,000 Special Olympic athletes from across Ontario. So again, if you have a team, you want to go in by yourself, please look up on our website and we can go. You can join there. And Chief, thank you for everything you tried to do during Sports Fest, but we understood the chilling temperatures weren't safe for our employees, your employees, or the dippers themselves. So thank you very much. And this concludes my report. Any questions, Council? Okay. Councillor Badaway, Regional Councillors Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do want to thank also the delegation this evening, both delegations. Great job, guys. Well done. First off, I will touch a bit on the amalgamation issue, although it's, in my view, a lot of noise and a lot of distraction from what we should be doing on a regular basis every day here in the chamber, as well as throughout city halls and at regional headquarters. But I see as the one delegation, Ms. Butters stated, this is an opportunity, frankly. It's an opportunity, what is this, the fourth or fifth time we've had this fight? You know, whether it's the amalgamation issue, whether it's the hospital issue, it just becomes an annual thing. And I see it as an opportunity. As Mayor Steele mentioned earlier, one, as an opportunity here locally to really get better at the business that the city's in every day. By looking at 2026 as doing things a lot different, and the benefit being to the residents and the businesses of Port Colborne. The mayor mentioned the municipal corporation and many other initiatives that you've been a part of for the past many years and moving on forward, an opportunity. Second is at the region, is moving forward with opportunity there as well. Frankly, it's time that a service and an operational review happen, and we decide which services the region should provide versus what services the local municipality should provide. In my view, most, if not all, services can, in fact, come back to the city of Port Colborne and all municipalities in ways that the mayor outlined earlier with respect to municipal corporations and other opportunities that we have here in the city of Port Colborne. I'm sure other municipalities can do the same. The bigger services, they don't necessarily have to be part of a government. They can be part of a board. It's happened in Montreal and it's happened in other places across the country. We can learn from that, and I'm sure that we can move forward in that direction, once again, presenting an opportunity for not only the entire region as a whole, WHOLE, but also the municipalities that belong to the region. Lastly is with respect to healthcare and the work that both the committee and the overall community is putting towards healthcare. Again, an opportunity to get back what we had, to get back what we lost back in 2000 when it was all amalgamated to the NHS. And I think, to my first point, a lot can be learned from that. And when we look at the healthcare in Niagara, and we look at the work that we're doing here in Port Colborne, I think, again, an opportunity, once again, to get back what we lost with respect to a governance structure, as well as the services that can be provided to the residents of the city of Port Colborne, and even beyond, because a lot of residents throughout the entire Niagara region can take full advantage of the plan that the city of Port Colborne is about to present to the province, and to some extent from the capital side, the federal government. If I can now pivot, Mr. Mayor, to transportation. Port Colborne's niche, quite frankly. As part of Niagara's transportation master plan process, I had the opportunity to speak with the project team to go over a lot of issues, to some extent from my former life when I was up in Ottawa as the Parliamentary Secretary for Transport, but also more specifically to what Niagara can and will be in the future because of the transportation strengths that we have here throughout the region. And it was an opportunity to emphasize that our transportation networks are one of Niagara's greatest economic strengths. The ability to move people and goods efficiently, both locally and across the borders, especially here in Niagara, all the borders, is fundamental to our region's growth. Niagara sits at the center of a transnational transportation system, linking road, rail, marine, air, and border infrastructure across Canada and the United States binationally, but once again, because of the diversification of our supply chains that both the Prime Minister and the President are working on, transnationally. Optimizing how these networks work together is important, rather than viewing them individually. It's critical, especially for the city of Port Colborne. This includes addressing road capacity challenges, strengthening marine and rail connections, improving border fluidity, and ensuring our infrastructure supports our capacity, evolves national and international supply chains. It strengthens international and national supply chains. The development of the Niagara Port Strait Corridor, anchored by multimodal hubs in the city of Port Colborne and the city of Thorold, and connected through the Welland Canal, represents a significant opportunity. We all get that. We all get the what. But it's incumbent upon us to start working on the how, and that's what this transportation master plan is going to do. Combined with the foreign trade zone designation and the advantages that it has and strong partnerships with multimodal operators, such as the Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority, Niagara is in fact becoming a key logistics, transnational gateway within the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence trade system. At a time of geopolitical uncertainty and supply chain realignment, the region is well positioned to diversify and optimize North American trade flows. Strategic infrastructure investments that this master plan, I'm sure, is going to identify, including projects such as the Mid-Peninsula Corridor, must remain, and I say must remain, part of this long-term planning. The timing is important, members, extremely important. Federal programs such as the Trade Diversification Corridors Fund and the Building Strong Communities Fund present opportunities, as well as provincial funding opportunities, to advance critical infrastructure capacity. A key objective of the master plan should be and will be to ensure Niagara is positioned to leverage these funding opportunities as they arise. Critical, so they don't default on the property taxpayers. These themes were reinforced last week when I attended Great Lakes Week in Washington, D.C. The event brings together leaders from across the binational Great Lakes St. Lawrence region, including members of Congress, Parliament, mayors, industry leaders, academics, and environmental associations and organizations, to speak with a unified voice about the future of our shared freshwater system and the economy it in fact supports. The Great Lakes and St. Lawrence region represents one of the most powerful economic regions in the world. Not many people know that. If it were a country, it would be the third largest economy globally, generating more than $9.6 trillion in economic activity annually. And we're a part of that. We're at the center of that here in Niagara, Port Colborne, the Welland Canal. That prosperity depends on the strength of the region's freshwater resources, industrial capacity, and highly integrated transportation network, which we expect this transportation master plan to not only identify and recognize, but also look at investing in through leverage funding opportunities from all levels of government and the private sector, as quite frankly is happening right here in Port Colborne now. When I spoke at the meeting hosted by the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, I emphasized that by working together across municipalities, states, and provinces, we can better position our communities for long-term economic stability. The strength of this region lies only in its individual cities, but in the scale and connectivity of the system that we all share. For Niagara, this conversation is local. Hence the reason why this transportation master plan is extremely important. The Welland Canal is a critical link in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway system. It is a critical link in the transnational trade corridor that's right here at our front door, connecting Lake Ontario and Lake Erie and enabling the movement of goods between the industrial heartland of North America and global markets. Through the Niagara Ports Trade Corridor, our region has an opportunity to further strengthen this role by expanding port capacity, improving multimodal connections, and supporting short sea shipping and integrated supply chains. For communities like Port Colborne, our manufacturing base, our transportation connectivity, and proximity to major border crossings position us as a strategic gateway within the Great Lakes economy. At a time when supply chains are being reevaluated across North America, optimizing transportation networks across the Great Lakes region, here in Niagara especially, is not simply an infrastructure issue, it's an economic strategy. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you, the City of Port Colborne, all throughout the region, our partners, organizations, businesses, working closely to help advance this strategy as we move forward with the Transportation Master Plan. By strengthening collaboration across our municipalities and with our multimodal transportation partners, we can in fact further develop the Niagara Ports Trade Corridor and strengthen Niagara as a key hub within the transportation Great Lakes St. Lawrence trade network, creating long-term economic opportunity for communities across the region, not only the region across the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence, but across the Niagara region and even into Western New York and overall southwestern Ontario. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Questions to the regional councillor? Good. Thanks, Hans. Okay, on to our consent agenda. Counselor Bagu has lifted items 13.3E and 13.3H, which will be considered as items 14.2 and 14.3 respectively. Are there any other items that anyone wishes to pull tonight? Okay, seeing none. If I could have Councilors Elliott and Danch move the council hereby approves the listed consent items on the March 10th, 2026 council agenda, that the consent items be approved on the recommendations as contained therein. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, we have 3 items for consideration this evening. We have item 14.1, the City of Port Colborne Healthcare Analysis Report prepared by KPMG, report 2026-40. Renee, if you want to go to the podium and take this away. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council, Regional Councillor Badaway, City staff, and members of the community who have joined us here tonight. Tonight's presentation of the Healthcare Analysis Report represents the culmination of many months of collaboration, research, and meaningful engagement with our community. Around this time last year, we were concluding the first phase of engagement on the future of healthcare in Port Colborne. Through that initial process, we heard very clearly from residents that healthcare was a top priority and that many in our community were concerned about what access to care will look like in the years ahead. Those voices helped shape the work that followed. Council responded by establishing the Healthcare Advisory Committee, a group of dedicated individuals who have approached this issue with determination and a deep commitment to improving healthcare access for our residents. Their leadership has been instrumental in guiding this process. There has also been strong leadership from our community. Many residents took the time to share their experiences, attend open houses and town halls, write letters, and engage directly with staff and council. Those stories are an important reminder that healthcare access is not an abstract policy discussion. It affects the daily lives and well-being of the people in our community. And there has also been leadership from this council, who made it clear from the outset that this work should be informed by the community and grounded in credible, evidence-based analysis. Tonight's report is an important step in ensuring that Port Colborne's voice in the broader healthcare conversation is supported by clear evidence about the needs of our residents. The Healthcare Advisory Committee met last night to review the report, discuss its findings, and they passed a motion to endorse it. Members asked thoughtful questions and had a detailed discussion about what the data tells us about healthcare needs in Port Colborne. Overall, the committee felt the analysis reflects what we have consistently heard from residents through our engagement efforts and ongoing discussions with community partners, including the Port Colborne Health Coalition. Port Colborne has not had a healthcare analysis that examines our local healthcare environment with this level of detail in almost 20 years. Tonight's presentation provides council and the public with the opportunity to review these findings together. At this time, I would like to introduce the team who led this work. Aaron Berg is joining us virtually. He is a partner in KPMG's health practice with more than 25 years of experience as both a clinician and healthcare consultant, supporting health systems across Canada. He is joined by Carrie Jeffries, Engagement Director at KPMG, and a registered nurse who has worked with health systems across the country to support health system planning and transformation initiatives. Also joining the team is Gavin Wardle, PhD and partner at Prairie Solutions Group, and a specialist in health services cost and resource use analysis with more than 20 years of experience. Together, they will walk council through the findings of the Port Colborne Healthcare Analysis Report and will be available to answer questions following the presentation. Aaron, Carrie, and Gavin, I'll turn it over to you. Mic's on for you already.
Okay, thank you so much. Mayor, councillors, community members, thank you so much for having us back here in Port Colborne to basically give you the outcome of the health analysis report. What I want to say at the beginning is we are going to be moving through some slides fairly quickly, but don't worry, we do have time at the end for any clarification questions. So just to give you a sense of how we're going to move through some of the findings from the report, we will focus on a lot of the, I'm going to say, themes and a lot of the consistent
either data points or sentiments from our engagement in the current state summary. We will talk about what that means in terms of planning considerations, and we'll also walk you through a peer benchmarking process that we conducted as part of this work. And then we'll round that up with a discussion and time for questions. So just from the inception of this report, we did have 3 key objectives. The first one being to really understand Port Colborne's current state as well as their future state through not only the data but also through engagement. And this really focuses on your access, your utilization of health services currently, and as your population ages and grows, what that will mean for access in the future. The second core concept is we wanted to give you a sense of where do you benchmark against similar peers across Ontario that have similar sized populations, to give you a sense of where Port Colborne's access challenges sit in relation to those other communities, to help identify gaps, risks, and then opportunities for improvement. And then the third piece is to really provide you with this analytics report as a foundational basis when you're moving into developing your future health and wellness strategy. So from the analytics perspective, there were 4 key pieces that we've brought together to summate what the findings are in this report. The first one is really a deep dive into your census data to look at current population characteristics, including your social determinants of health, looking at that data in the same vein of your access needs and your utilization, as well as identifying any current and future pressures that you'll feel with changing demographics and population growth. The second piece, as I mentioned, we are going to walk you through a benchmarking exercise that we did that shows how you compare against 9 of your peer comparison groups in terms of population and geographic characteristics. The third and fourth thing here is really one of the most important parts of this process. We did send out a broad survey to understand the sentiments of the community as it relates to health service access and utilization. A lot of those perspectives were consistent with a survey that you conducted in 2025, but we wanted to ensure if there was any recent sentiments that we captured those as well. And the last piece that we did was interest holder interviews as well as key focus groups to really get the lived experience of how healthcare services are experienced here in Port Colborne by the residents that consume those services. So instead of going through all of the data and giving you what we found at the end, I'm going to give you 3 key themes that come up consistently across all of the analysis that we've done and all of the engagement that we've done. The first is it's very clear that Port Colborne has a high-risk population. Gavin's going to take you through some of the data that describes what those risk factors are as it relates to some of the social determinants of health. And you also have a rapidly aging population, not dissimilar necessarily to the rest of the province or the country, but you do demonstrate some higher risk factors within that population that we'd like to share with you tonight. And the second piece is with those increased social determinants of health and those risk factors, it is demonstrated that any risk factor that increases the vulnerability of your population, you will see higher UCC or ED usage, and we can see that in the data and utilization data that we've looked at. So in terms of the urgent care center, which is a key consideration, obviously, moving forward, the urgent care center is clearly filling a gap in your community right now. The population heavily relies on the UCC to meet their unmet needs. You're not only serving your own community, almost 50% of the visits to the UCC are from Port Colborne residents. You do have another cohort of residents coming from outside of Port Colborne in accessing those services. The other thing that's clear in the data is that the UCC utilization and the ED in local communities are taking care of 95% more likely for your residents to access UCC or ED for what we call a primary care sensitive condition or something that can be met within primary care. So you do benchmark higher in that regard, but the high utilization demonstrates that there's other gaps in the system that need to be considered. The third is there are real barriers to accessing care, one being there is limited after hours and weekend coverage with the current resources in the community, and transportation, I know that was a topic earlier, does need to be considered when we talk about access or anything shifting in care services in Port Colborne. So I'm just going to ask Gavin to take you through some of the key data.
Thank you, Carrie. So as part of the study, we made an examination to try to understand the characteristics of your population and what are their needs today for healthcare services and what are the access gaps they have for healthcare services. So we do have quite a lot of analysis in the report you received. I'm going to jump over a few of the slides, but welcome to take questions on all the slides. So the very first thing is the single biggest driver of need for healthcare services now and in the future is, of course, population size, population age, and population growth rates. There are different views of population growth rates that are available. There's 3 scenarios shown on this exhibit. The very first one is the reference standard from the Ontario Ministry of Finance, which is what the Ministry of Health uses for all healthcare funding and resource allocation decisions that they make. But there's a risk potentially that that will underestimate the growth in Port Colborne. So what we've elected to use is this medium growth scenario. You'll also see there's a higher growth scenario. We haven't used that, but that's shown there for reference purposes. All the analysis, all the forecasting that you've seen, you'll see in this report and the broader report is based on that medium growth scenario. The other thing, as Carrie mentioned, is that when we think of the population needs, we can think about the size of the population, the age of the population, but social determinants of health risks are really strongly associated with unmet need for healthcare services and increased demand overall. Your population is at higher risk from the social determinants of health than the provincial average by quite a long way. That's important because if you don't take care to recognize those needs or those risks, you will underestimate the needs of your population. So the ministry might make some calculations and say, you have too many services here, but they won't recognize that the services, the higher use of services is driven by needs associated with social determinants of health risks. The last thing about this is it's really important to remember what are those social determinants of health risks. They're called social, they're not genetic or other factors, because they're mutable with policy interventions. So it may take time, but through social policy and economic development, you can reduce social determinants of health risks of your population and thereby improve their health and reduce their demand for healthcare services. What this exhibit here on slide 11 is describing in numbers essentially what Carrie mentioned before. So your population are high users of emergency and urgent care services. This 1.37 number at the bottom of the first column means that your population, 21,000 people, had 37% more visits to an urgent care center or an ED combined than the provincial average, right? So visits per capita are 37% higher here than we would expect given the provincial average. So that means, again, your population relies on the urgent care center for a whole host of different types of services that are provided elsewhere in suitable alternatives to an urgent care center or to an ED. The numbers above that, by these low-risk groups and high-risk groups and so forth, show that as population risk increases from the social determinants of health, so do the rate of visits to an urgent care center or an ED combined. Okay? So that's a social determinants of health gradient. As the risks increase, health service needs increase as well. This exhibit here, there was some interest in thinking about this. These are visits by time of day to the urgent care center, and also highlighted here is a number of visits overnight. And so overnight, back in 2019-20, for example, there's no overnight visits now, of course, the visits were 6 between an 8-hour period, so less than 1 visit per hour. And we show this just to say that your population size, even with a lot of growth, it's going to be very difficult to maintain an efficient and well-staffed and sustainable urgent care system or emergency department system through the overnight hours. Okay? It's very difficult to staff that, and difficult to do recruiting, difficult to run it in an efficient way. That's just one point we wanted to make about the types of visits that are coming to the urgent care center and alternatives to them. Carrie mentioned this before. So the last column here, again, it's these numbers that you can take the number 1 away from it, and you can see the remaining number is the percentage that use here by your population is higher than the provincial average. So this first row, it says PCSC, primary care sensitive condition. Asthma, diabetes, heart failure, COPD, those kinds of conditions that if people have good access to primary care, they don't go to the urgent care center or to an ED. Your population has 95% more visits to your urgent care center than the provincial average. This is a really important finding because what it means is they're using the urgent care center as a patch for something that would be better, like provided in primary care, proper modern primary care practice. So that's a really important finding there as well. Then there's just a difference between acute and chronic of those. But overall, again, the visits at the bottom of that column, 1.37, 37% more visits overall. All of that indicates a lack of access to suitable alternatives to an emergency department or an urgent care center in your community. Okay, and then let me carry on. Oh, do you want to do the?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry about this. Thank you.
No problem. So we did conduct comparative benchmarking, looking at health service needs and access risks for Port Colborne and 9 peer comparator municipalities. We identified these peer comparators based on population size and geographic characteristics, thinking about things like rurality and proximity to waterfront. This benchmarking analysis looks at local access to healthcare services, so things like laboratory services, diagnostic imaging, for example, X-ray, ultrasound, CT scan, as well as local access to emergency and urgent care services. I think the key takeaway from this analysis is the important role that the UCC currently plays in providing local and timely access to some of these core health services, namely laboratory, diagnostic, and urgent care services. I'll hand it back to Gavin for the next benchmarking discussion.
Okay, so for these peer municipalities, we examined, did a sort of ranking process by these 5 different measures that relate to health service needs and access gaps. The very first one is the population at high risk from social determinants of health. So 84% of your population is at high risk. The only community amongst the peer group that was higher than that was Port Elgin or Saugeen Shores at 93%. That's an important finding because it means your population, first of all, it's mutable, like you can change these things over time, but they are at risk from things like lack of transportation. These people will feel those kinds of effects and those gaps more than other populations. Okay, so that's the first part, is your population across Ontario and across these peer communities at very high risk from social determinants of health. Then the rate of ED or UCC visits for primary care sensitive conditions, you're essentially, compared to this peer group, 122% higher, right? So that means that you have really high rates of this, as I mentioned before, and what that shows is a gap in access to suitable alternatives, right? The ED is not the right place, or an urgent care center is not the right place for this type of care, right? Some visits will end up there. Of course, they have really big exacerbations, but maintenance should be happening through primary care. Admission rates for primary care sensitive conditions, your community is not that high compared to the other communities, 15% rate of admission, so 15% higher. ALC use of acute resources, that means alternate level of care. So that's people who are in an acute care bed waiting for access to something outside of the hospital following their acute care. That could be home care, long-term care, inpatient rehabilitation care. Again, your community is not that high in that area, so it doesn't point to, relative to these other communities, a lack of access to post-acute services. And the last one is projected growth and demand. So you can have some challenges today, your peer communities can have some challenges today. How fast are those challenges growing from population growth and aging? And even with the moderate growth forecast, you have slower growth than the average of these communities and much slower than the fastest growing community, which is Niagara-on-the-Lake at 51%. So when we put all that together, you can see different communities have different pressures, but the ones that really stick out for Port Colborne are the population at risk, so things that put them at their very vulnerable population, and the other thing is the use of ED services for things that could be handled better elsewhere. So I really want to make that point, is that the urgent care center, it's important at the moment as a patch for the lack of access to primary care, but it's not the right solution for this specific patient population.
As part of the healthcare analysis report, we also conducted some interest holder engagement, as Carrie mentioned earlier. The purpose of this engagement was really building upon kind of the broad community engagement that the city undertook early in 2025 through the Future of Healthcare Public Engagement Survey. We took a little bit more of a kind of targeted, narrow focus to our engagement, working with committees of council, healthcare providers, community agencies, local representatives, et cetera, to better understand some of the current state strengths, challenges, and opportunities as it relates to health and wellness services in Port Colborne. We did this through, as Carrie mentioned, a survey, as well as interviews and focus groups. We'll get into some of those kind of key findings in a moment. And this community engagement will continue in the coming weeks and months with Renee as her and team undertake kind of further engagement to inform and develop the health and wellness strategy for this city. In terms of survey results, just wanted to highlight a couple key takeaways. There's lots more data in the full report, but to highlight a couple of the interesting findings from the survey, we asked about groups facing barriers to healthcare in Port Colborne, and this theme came up in a number of places, but people without transportation was identified as the number one most impacted group. We also asked which healthcare services are most urgently needed in Port Colborne, and urgent or after-hours care were identified as the most needed service, sort of speaking to the inability to kind of get timely care or care when you need it, followed by primary care and mental health and addiction services. I'm going to, in the interest of time, skip over these key themes as they come up in some of our other findings through the interest holder engagement and in the planning considerations. Recognize this slide is very busy, but what we've tried to do here is summarize some of the key themes and feedback that we heard through the interest holder interviews and focus groups. So we identified some key themes as it relates to strengths, challenges, and opportunities. Starting with the strengths, one of the themes that we've heard a little bit about this evening is around population growth and new economic development. So that investment in infrastructure and manufacturing sector means kind of more jobs, population growth, but also means increased needs and demand for healthcare services and other services. We heard about the strength around the local access to lab and diagnostic services currently provided through the UCC and the ability to show up for a visit, get seen, get diagnostic kind of services, get the treatment you need in a timely way through the UCC is kind of perceived as a strength of the community currently. We also heard lots of positive feedback about the current health and community services providers in the community, in particular Port Care and Bridges, the work that they're doing to kind of serve and address gaps and provide care to some of the most vulnerable populations in the community. And we also heard about the strong leadership within the community, and this really spans healthcare leaders, business, community, and municipal leadership, and the opportunity here to kind of continue coming together to enhance health and wellness services for the community. Looking at the challenges, I'll just highlight a couple here. I think we've heard a little bit about timely access to care. So again, some of the challenges around getting care when you need it. This relates to urgent care, home care, primary care, and other health care and wellness services. On the topic of primary care, I think this is felt to be a challenge in terms of kind of timely access again, the ability to get a same day, next day appointment, and some kind of wait times there. Also wanted to note some of the capacity constraints that primary care kind of highlighted in terms of not having fully built out kind of healthcare, primary care teams with allied health providers, nurse practitioners, OTs, PTs, et cetera, as well as administrative support to take away some of that administrative burden and open up more time to care for patients. Lastly, under challenges, I'll just kind of reiterate the theme around transportation we've heard, I think, a number of times, and kind of the challenges that causes residents to access care locally, but also regionally at sort of some of the regional acute centers and centers of excellence. And again, this particularly impacts some of the most vulnerable in the community. Building on the strengths and challenges, we also heard about several opportunities, strengthening access to team-based primary care, enhancing community care and support services, bringing care closer to home, and opportunities to kind of explore new partnership models. I won't go into too much detail here as I'll hand it over to Aaron, who is online, to speak more about some of these opportunities and considerations for planning for Port Colborne. Oh, sorry, this is Carol, are
Perfect.
you there?
Thanks. Can folks hear me okay? Just a quick check.
It's a little quiet.
Okay. So just four things that I think are helpful to consider as you're now taking what you just heard and trying to apply it into a little bit of a so what as some of your planning considerations. The first, and I'll sort of tie back to what Gavin talked about, there's a number of different indications in terms of the data that we looked at that would suggest that the answer isn't more urgent and emergency care, but rather strengthening primary care and integrated care models. So an opportunity to be able to ultimately explore how you could do that to create better access to primary healthcare services. The second one here is around creating opportunities to strengthen community awareness and navigation of healthcare services. So oftentimes our communities across the province challenge to understand where and how to access care, what's available, everything from where a pharmacy could be an appropriate choice for minor ailments to primary health care to when to use urgent care or emergency care, and just even the supports that may be required to do that navigation better. The third consideration is around exploring opportunities to strengthen collaboration and alignment amongst partners. To state the obvious, the city is not the jurisdiction in charge of healthcare, but you have a vested interest for all of your residents and citizens. So what we've seen work in other parts of the province and other parts of the country is where the municipalities come together with healthcare services providers and create some of that additional collaboration around some of your goals for residents. So looking at ways to be able to do that, whether that be inside the scope of Ontario Health Teams or something that might be a bit bespoke in nature for meeting the needs of the community particularly. And then finally, exploring opportunities to better align transportation supports with healthcare access. Gavin and Doug both mentioned the importance of the barrier around transportation access and what that means for access to healthcare services. And so certainly trying to tie down together what might be in your control as municipality to look at transportation options to better serve the needs of the community. So maybe with that, I think we're going to turn it back over to you in the event that you've got any questions for our team. And thank you for your time and consideration in the discussion here today.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Aquilina first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could just make a few comments as well as Councillor Bodnar before we open up to questions from the rest of council. So first of all, I'd like to thank the team from KPMG. It's nice to meet you in person, finally, except for Aaron, we didn't get to meet you. And your partners at PSG? Okay, thank you, that's much simpler. For your excellent work delivered for the City of Port Colborne. The depth and quality of this analysis is clear, and we appreciate the effort required to produce a report of this caliber in a relatively short time frame. I also want to recognize the work of city staff, in particular Renee, for all of the hard work that she does for the Health Committee, and the members of the Healthcare Advisory Committee. This has been a long and thoughtful process involving many hours of research, discussion, and collaboration, all focused on a better understanding of the healthcare needs in our community. Most importantly, I want to thank the residents of Port Colborne. Over the past year, many members of our community took the time to share their experiences and concerns about the healthcare access by attending open houses and town halls, writing letters, and participating in the important conversations. Those voices have helped shape the work that we are doing and seeing tonight. For me personally, this work is deeply meaningful. And I think it's just as meaningful for many residents within Port Colborne and their families. Healthcare access affects every family in our community. What this report provides is something we have not had in many years, which is clarity. The data presented tonight helps better understand the realities facing our residents and gives us a strong foundation to move forward. This report is an important milestone, but it's not the end of the work that needs to be done. The next steps will be finalizing the health and wellness strategy framework and engaging our community once again in the coming months to gather input for a path forward. I look forward to those conversations and working together for a stronger and accessible healthcare future for Port Colborne.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those that don't know, Councilor Aguilina and myself are the council reps on the Healthcare Advisory Committee. I would also like to thank the KPMG team and your partners, PSG, for the work presented tonight. The analysis and clarity this report provides is extremely valuable to our community at this moment in time. I also want to recognize city staff and the members of the Healthcare Advisory Committee for the significant amount of time and effort that has gone into this entire process. This has been a complex issue, and the work done over the past year reflects a real commitment to understanding the challenges our community faces. Having worked on healthcare issues in Port Colborne for many years, both as mayor and now as a councillor, I know how important access to care is for our residents. It has been part of the conversation in this community for a long time. What is different tonight is that we now have a much clearer picture of the situation we are facing. The data in this report gives us a strong evidence base to guide the next steps. Those next steps are already underway, and additional data and analysis will be coming forward soon to further strengthen our understanding of healthcare needs in Port Colborne. For the first time in many years, we are bringing together the information needed to begin identifying solutions. I believe this is an important moment for our community. While the challenges are real, the path forward is becoming clearer. And I look forward to continuing this work with our residents as we build stronger healthcare access in Port Colborne. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bodnar. And to both Councilors Aquiline and Bodnar, thank you for serving with me on our public committee, and our public members, the 5 of them, do a phenomenal job. But tonight is an important step for Port Colborne. For the first time in many years, we have a clear picture of the healthcare needs in our community. And that clarity helps us move forward with focus, working with our residents and partners to improve access to care throughout Port Colborne. This report also means that when Port Colborne speaks about healthcare moving forward, we'll be speaking with clear evidence about what our community needs moving forward. So again, we'd like to thank KPMG for attending our council meeting tonight, as well as numerous other Zoom meetings that we've had over the last little while, and for meeting with our community groups and stakeholders across the city of Port Colborne. Again, thank you. So council, at this time, I'll go to questions for KPMG, and then we'll put the motion on the floor. So this is questions, not comment time. Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Great report. Love data, love evidence-based data. But I want to ask you some things that, to me, stem from the report. So, and I want to ask you guys because you have a handle on things that happen outside of Niagara. And some of those best practices that are out there, you may see as a way forward, and I'd like to hear suggestions on it. So the first one and simplest one is, you mentioned on the one page, the comparator cities. And the one you mentioned, the only one worse than our area was Port Elgin. I don't know if you've done any work for them, but it would be interesting I think for us to know also what Port Elgin is doing, and are there any best practices or things they're doing if they have even a worse situation? And maybe I might just add to that, or anywhere else in a similar condition. Have them been success stories, and what do they do?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll maybe just start a bit with that. I have not worked with Port Elgin, and where you pointed out that they are worse than you is having a greater proportion of the population at high risk from the social determinants of health. This is something that's been known for 40 or 50 years about the effects of social determinants of health on not only health, but lack of access to healthcare services. And there's been a lot of action maybe in the past 5 or 10 years. Maybe the most prominent example of what people are doing with social determinants of health might be the UHN example of establishing housing. So UHN, University Health Network in Toronto, got into the business of building housing for the people who were kept coming back to the emergency department used for social needs. So what happens with social determinants of health is the things that work are tailored to the community's specific needs. So you have to understand more about these populations than we can see from the data about what services, social services and supports that they would need to reduce the risks they face from these social determinants of health. So there's lots of examples of what people are doing, but we'd have to think more about what it is that would be tailored to your population.
Well, I couldn't have asked you to give me a better answer to set up this next question. A lot of things that this data has shown us, we either knew, or I'm going to be bold enough to say, supports the NH's position on the urgent care center. It says clearly that 55% of the people aren't from Port Colborne using that. So the NHS can say, well, you know what? Great advice. We need to shore up Welland and get these people from other sites that are visiting here. So now we're down to 45%. 90% of that could have went to primary care. NHS says, yes, Port Colborne, you better go out and find some more doctors. That takes 90% of the 45% problems free. Social determinants of health. Why I say what you answered, so that's housing, agreed. That's, nutrition, it's mental health, it's all those kind of things, homelessness, all those kind of things that are used in the facility. All of them of which aren't on the NHS. But the NHS is on a fast track to close this place and Fort Erie. All those things in your data that aren't them. So they're, in my view, a silo operating with their own jurisdiction, their own problems, their own budget, which is about healthcare and their hospitals. So they're saying, theoretically, to the province, our plan, open that place, we close Fort Erie and Port Colborne. But I know we're going to pitch the province for a lot of these social determinants of health, but is there a strategy that says, until we get those clinicians, till we get the doctors, till we solve some of these other problems, that place has to stay open? And I don't know if we've uncovered that or leveraged that with our request from the province. I mean, the NHS wants a contribution. They want out of this building. And the only way they can get out, in my view, is to do what your data says. So how are we, and maybe this isn't a you question, but it might be in your orbit out there. How do we ensure that the actual handshake exchanges, this doesn't close till you, Ministry of Health, fix this along with us? And I don't think that anybody's yet been talking about that. If you want to close this place, you got to fix this problem. And I don't know if you want to comment on that. It may be more a Renee question, but others are facing closures and others are facing social determinants of health, which to me in many cases is a provincial fix. And yet the province can dictate to the NHS when they can close this place. And would you advocate that without all this being done, the NHS should not close Port Colborne urgent care?
Go ahead.
I think, Aaron, do you want to start, or do you want me to?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
So perhaps one, it's a really important question, and it's the right question to be asking. I think we have to kind of realize what the jurisdiction is for healthcare. Like you were quite spot on. Like Niagara Health does not have the responsibility for all things. They are an acute care hospital. They have some outpatient type facilities and so on, but primary care is not the sort of burden, the planning burden, if you will, of Niagara Health. I think the two, or probably I would say three constructs all revolve around kind of the provincial strategic direction is, at the ultimate level, of course, the Ministry of Health. Ontario Health has 6 health regions, so you have a regional kind of, I'll say channel to have planning conversations with the regions, and you'll want to have some sort of collaborative agreement as to what's needed with the province through Ontario Health in that capacity. And then we have these kind of planning tables called OHTs, and within those OHTs, and these are the Ontario Health teams, it's the intent is for it to be an integrated planning system that brings care together across different parts of the healthcare system. And within those OHTs, in their early days, and they don't have a huge amount of, I would say, formal decision-making power, but as part of, for example, like taking the primary care part of the equation, each OHT is required to have a primary care network. Those primary care networks are being asked now as part of the primary care action plan that's in place within Ontario for where there are new opportunities to build new capacity in communities. Those OHTs and their primary care networks are being asked to weigh in on where they think the biggest needs are within their communities. So when you kind of take a step back and say, like, there's not a right or wrong answer other than to say, finding your partners and your collaborators across the community to ensure that you have a voice at the table is probably going to be important, but ultimately you'll need to sort of probably revolve around that ecosystem of players to make sure that you can appropriately advocate for the community. I hope that's a reasonable answer. We're certainly probably not in a good position to give you lobbying or advocacy advice with the province, but I think that using the kind of data and working in those spheres will help kind of bring the right answers, I hope.
I'd like to add something as well. I also don't have the temerity to tell you what you should advocate for or what NHS should do, but I hope the report shows that at this moment, the urgent care center is essential for your population. It provides a lot of care and your population is at high risk, right? So the worst thing to do is take it away and do nothing. But the better thing to do for everybody is to do something different, because what you're doing now, or the system that's available now, is not the right one for your population's needs, but it works as a patch. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just maybe to tag on to what Councilor Bruno was saying, and I don't think that your report looked at this end of the 55%, but we have a large population of about, 20,000 that come here from maybe 5 to 6 months out of the year. So I think some of that 55% could be part of them. I think there's also a bigger issue within the other municipalities and urgent cares or emergency departments where people see that there's less of a wait time in Port Colborne and would travel here. as opposed to waiting at an emergency room, similar to what we're doing now and going to, Dunville or wherever it is, right? So I think there's multiple factors that could maybe comprise that 55% that is not Port Colborne residents, but I think to your point, like removing the UCC is our biggest move that we need to make to have something in place if that's going to happen, right? Because we can see that there's a large demonstration that it is bridging a gap that we haven't been able to fix yet.
Thank you, Councilor. Further questions to the presenters? Okay. Oh, Renee?
I just wanted to sincerely apologize to Doug Miller. I didn't introduce him at the very beginning because I didn't know he was going to be part of the presentation. Doug and I worked very closely through this entire process, so thank you, Doug. I didn't want to not recognize you tonight and all the work you did.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Renee. I knew I was missing a name up here. So again, to Aaron, Carrie, Doug, and Gavin, thank you for coming, and I'll let you sit down now because I will put a report on the floor in case there's a question that we may need to bring it back up, but we're not going to make you stand there all night. So again, thank you for all your work and what we need to go forward and whatever we need from you guys. I'm sure we'll be asking lots of questions, whether it's through staff and council here or through our public committee. So
Thank you very much.
perfect. Thank you. So at this time, if I could have Councilors Ackling and Bodner move that the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer Department Report 2026-40 be received. That the Council endorse the City of Port Colborne Healthcare Analysis Report, Appendix A, as the technical foundation to inform the development of the city's health and wellness strategy and to support evidence-based healthcare planning, advocacy, and partnership development in the City of Port Colborne. The Council directs staff to pursue provincial, federal, and partnership-based funding and infrastructure opportunities that support healthcare infrastructure, primary care expansion, diagnostic access, and community-based health services in Port Colborne, and that staff bring forward any resulting financial implications to Council as opportunities arise. The Council directs staff to continue evidence-based advocacy to ensure equitable access to healthcare services for Port Colborne residents during and beyond the transition of the Complex and Urgent Care Center. Questions on this? Councillor Bodner, any questions since you moved it? Councillor Aquilina, anything further questions? Anything further, Council? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Council. Thanks, Renee. Item 14.2 is 725 King Street Surplus Property Declaration 2026-43. If I could have Councillors Hoyle and Bodner move that Government Relations and Business Enterprises Report 2026-43 be received and that Council declare the city-owned property located at 725 King Street as surplus, that this property be exempt from the city's sale of land policy process. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you changed the number, you almost screwed me up here, but I got her.
Okay.
Just a little bit of understanding here. The city, we put in about $587,000, so $600,000 for this affordable housing, which I'm happy to do, happy to vote for, no problem. But I would like to see whether it's on an MOU or later on when we do house these people for affordable housing that, like the Chestnut Street apartment by Port Cares, that Port Colborne residents got first crack at getting the accommodations once they left. It was open to the Niagara region to put whoever they want. Because basically, Mr. Mayor, I find that if you're on the list and you're from Sudbury or North Bay, if you're number one, you're coming down to Port Colborne. And it happens now, it's happening every day, Mr. Mayor, in affordable housing in Port Colborne. I know people that do live in affordable housing, and all of a sudden they have a neighbor from Sudbury. That person doesn't want to be here, but they had to take it because they're on the list. And eventually they move out to Waller, St. Catharines, and they're homeless. So because we are putting money into this, Mr. Mayor, I'm hoping that through the Canadian Mortgage Corporation, which Port Cares was also in, that we make some sort of agreement that we can house Port Colborne residents first crack. After that, they were open.
Okay, Mr. Long.
Through you, Your Worship, appreciate the councillors' comments, and we'll make sure that the Niagara Regional Housing are aware of your views and your preferences. Certainly Niagara Regional Housing, they manage a wait list that is quite lengthy, but we'll certainly pass along your comments about having Port Colborne residents given sort of first dibs on new units that would be part of that new housing project. City staff and Niagara Region planning staff envision a building with 50-plus units, so I think that's great news for our community as well as Niagara Region. So happy to pass that on. Just wanted to note as well that city staff will be bringing forward two other related reports to the April 14th council meeting. One report will deal with an updated MOU between the city and Niagara Regional Housing to reflect some project updates and some sort of cost responsibilities and so on. There will also be a project update at that time. City staff will also bring forward a report to transfer the two city properties to Niagara Regional Housing. So just wanted to make council aware of that. That is scheduled for the April 14th council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm good.
Okay. And just to confirm some numbers you threw out, Councillor, just so the public knows. So in May 2024, we acquired the property for $407,000. We incurred environmental site assessments at $35,000, designated substance and hazardous material survey and external lead abatement for $45,000, demolition and soil sampling for $75,000. The acquisition cost will be reimbursed to the city through the Housing Accelerator Fund. And then there are approximately $80,000 that are ineligible under the Housing Accelerator Fund reimbursement. But then there's a further $75,000 that are eligible for the reimbursement as they were incurred after the Housing Accelerator Fund approval date. So, it is a small number that we're investing in a great project, cleaning up some properties and actually housing more people than that are on the property, that were on the property when they were being used by the duplex that was there and the 5-unit Niagara Regional Housing. So great, and thank you for that question, Councillor. Any further questions on this one? All those in favor? That's carried. Next is 14.3, Brownfield Tax Increment Grant, Fraser Street and Welland Street Properties, Canal Breeze Inc. Property, 2026-26. And just a reminder for Council that Councillor Beauregard has already declared his conflict of interest on this item. If I could have Councillors Aquilina and Begg move that the Planning and Development Department Report 2026-26 be received, that the bylaw attached as Appendix B, bylaw being a bylaw to enter into the agreement with Canal Breeze Inc., Rank and Construction, for a tax increment-based grant with development charge grant in the Brownfield Community Improvement Project area under the Comprehensive Community Improvement Plan for 46, 48, 54 Fraser Street and 302 Welland Street with the Alma and Bell Street road allowances be approved. Councillor Baggy, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm definitely in favor of this. Anytime we clean dirty soil and put some housing there, I'm all for it. In reading the report, though, I did talk to our chief planner and Mr. Cotton, that in the background or in the report, it mentions a 11 and a 14-story apartment, 2 apartments. And basically when I asked for clarification, like, I know it has to come to council, Mr. Axe replied that nothing's been brought to the city regarding any building whatsoever. This is only for the brownfield, and the other thing, that's it. So the 11 and 14 is probably shouldn't have been in the report, to tell you the truth, Mr. Mayor, but they said no problem. So that's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Hoyle.
Through the mayor, I've had a few residents asking questions about how this brownfield tax incentive works out. So I think Eric got my message from Bram about giving a little Cliff's note on it for clarification, because they don't get what it's for, and it's better that you explain it better.
Mr. Hatch.
Through the mayor, just to address a couple of comments. The applications to undertake the development on this site have not been made yet. Typically, we would see those first, but due to the region terminating or changing their program as of April 1st, we've had a little bit of a rush on some applications coming in for incentive programs ahead of the development approval. So for this property, there is still a zoning amendment application that'll need to be made, and that'll be before council. There'll be a public meeting for that process. There's a site plan application that has to be made and gone through. So all of that is still coming down the pipe. With respect to the TIG for this property, in terms of how it works, there's an estimate of what has been what the cost will be to clean the site up. That cost is then subtracted from a tax increase in the site over 10 years. It's difficult to explain, maybe easier to write out. However, on this property, I may refer to the CAO because I believe we've calculated this one slightly differently. Do you,
CAO.
Through the mayor to council. One way to think about this is you have a property right now, and let's say the property produces $10,000 of property taxes. We're going to go and we're going to build a new building, and let's say that new building produces $100,000 of new property taxes. That $90,000 difference isn't in our budget today. Nobody's relying on that money today. But the developer that built that new building, they had to incur a number of costs. And let's say it was $500,000 of costs. So that means, and how these grants work is, that extra taxes that's going to be collected, instead of putting it into the general government budget, what we do is we use those dollars and we repay the developer for all of those brownfield costs that they incurred. So that means we talked about $10,000 originally, it went to $100,000 in that example. That $90,000 differential we would put towards a grant back to the developer until they've recouped all of those brownfield costs. The 90,000 was never in our budget, and the rationale for having programs like this is these are very costly investments to be able to go through, and risky investments, because somebody has to buy the property, do the decontamination, make it safe to be able to build on. This helps incentivize developers to move forward. And then once they've recouped those costs, then those dollars come back into the general budget of the municipality and are used to offset costs for all residents everywhere. I hope that's of little help, or some help, not little help. Hope it was a lot of help, and if not, we can always come back and maybe do a presentation at some point in time for council on it too.
Through the mayor, you explained it a lot better than I did, so that's why I asked the experts. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Councillor. And I think one of the best examples that this council has done is the West Street Rankin building, where the 4 properties generated about $24,000 prior to construction. They took an old brownfield site, the old Marsh Allied plant, revitalized that. So even including the grant that's very similar to this, or exactly like this, they pay us today about $100,000, just a little under $100,000. And that includes the grant we're giving them. So we've gone from 24 to 100, so we're making about 75,000 more. Then after 10 years, when they come back online, it's whatever the impact value was of that building. So, you know, even doing what we did, we're still collecting way more money than we would have if all those buildings and contaminated property sat there. So, as Brian said, it is a good investment. We've seen this throughout the city on numerous projects that have happened, and quite frankly, with Vance and I at the region, we see it coming there, even in some of the bigger municipalities that have larger old factories, like Welland had in a number of places, the old Union Carbide, Stelco, and things like that. St. Catharines had a number of them, so they've revitalized a lot of those and most of them, as you said, Councillor Bagu, most of them went back to housing. So, or not back to housing, went to housing. So it is a good program. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. With the region stopping this program April 1st, does that mean the city stops their portion too, or?
No, we're totally separate.
We're totally separate?
Yeah.
Okay, so we could continue on.
We can continue with our portion.
With our portion of the taxes? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bruno.
Yes, I think it's a very good idea that before that closes, the regional tax dollars can come back to Port Colborne. Now, but I guess my question would be now, are there any other potential developments that are on the precipice of wanting to start and could partake of that program, and the fact that it's ending on the regional side, April 1st, that we could give them heads up on? They may not have a sophisticated network of knowing when certain programs expire. Is there anybody else in a similar situation taking either a contaminated piece of property or in one of the CIPs?
Mr. Law or Mr. Ash?
Through the mayor, we do have at least one other that we're working with right now, but one of the qualifications that the region has is that you need to have an estimate on the cleanup cost. And that needs to be provided to us, and that's what informs the report and some of the value. And not all of that is finalized yet. So there's a bit of a last minute rush. We may see one, maybe two more on the next council agenda. And then after March 24th, it would be too late. There will still be a regional program. It's just substantially changing. Yeah.
Okay, further questions? Councillor Elliott.
Now you made me start thinking about questions. Through you to, I guess, Eric or the CAO, does this program differentiate between rental properties and condominium buildings? Or are they both the same?
Eric?
Through to the councillor. No, it doesn't. It just goes to the assessed value of who the property owner is. So if it's a condo, there's a value per unit in the condo. It's applied against. For a rental property, it'll be applied to however that ownership of that property is divided up.
Okay, and I know the response to this question. You know, we're trying to have affordable housing built, and when you see the price of condominiums for sale, and this one on the billboards is 400,000, 500,000, 600,000. I know every piece of real estate that comes for sale is affordable to somebody, but rental units are what a lot of people are looking for, and we don't seem to be getting built. And would it be in our best interest to have an added value to rental properties through this program if they redevelop a brownfield? Because not everybody can afford a condo, but there are people looking for rental properties that can't find them. And I just wanted either of your opinions on that.
I'm going to go to the CAO.
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor. So the CIP program that the city does have incentives. So if we're taking, in certain parts of the city specifically, if we're taking property that we have and we're turning it from, let's say, 1 unit to 5 units to 10 units, we actually have even cash incentives built in. So I think, and I can let others, Gary Long or Eric Alex, talk to this, but if you were to look at our incentive program for that, we are leading the way with how that is. The complexity is converting some of that, and no doubt, converting is something we are still working on. But the program that this council in this term finalized is very advantageous to be able to move forward with apartment rental type units. So we have the tools in place. I think we just have to continue to let the team go out and work with developers on that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And just one other question that kind of jumped off the page at me when I was reading it is that the remediation at $5.5 million. I haven't been at town long enough to know what was there prior to the vacant land. So I'll ask, what was there that caused the contamination and how bad is it?
Cohen's wrecking yard. Right, Mark? When I was a kid, you remember, Frank, the glass pile had to be 40 feet high, and plus it was a wrecking yard. Yeah.
I just, when I saw the cost for remediation, it was like 5.5 million. Is it like that bad? That they gotta remove, like, obviously a fair amount of the earth, so.
Yeah.
Okay, just as a information question, thanks.
Yeah, no, that's what it was. Yeah. Further questions? And again, noting the counselor's conflict. All those in favor? That's carried. On to staff remarks. Madam Clerk, anything this evening?
Nope, nothing this evening.
Thank you. Chief Double?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, a couple of updates. Everyone is aware, for decades, Canadian citizens have had the opportunity to dial 911 when they want to report an emergency for themselves or somebody else. Since the inception of that program, technology hasn't changed. Since 2023, all levels of government, right down to municipal even, have been updating their call centers to next generation 911. I just want to update council that here in the region, the 911 centers have completed and are online. And specifically for fire, our partners in St. Catharines are up and running and everything's running smooth. Nothing changes. People still dial 911. The differences are that you can text your emergency, video call an emergency, or send a video of an emergency. There's many more enhancements, but those for people who are dialing 911, those are the specific enhancements. So for us here in the region, we're online. Coupled with that, just happy to announce that here in Port Colborne, our fire and emergency services is transitioning to our digital platform at the end of this month. Equipment will be installed, portable radios, and all the required training will be completed by the first week of April. I just wanted to report on that. Thanks.
And Chief, it's about time. 8 years ago, I started with the Niagara Regional Police Board, and I was a representative on the NG 911 task force with fire, police, EMS, and it's about time. And it's a good thing.
It is a good thing from a response capability. It certainly provides tremendous enhancements. It has taken a long time, and we're a little bit ahead of the curve here in the region, so happy to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Shapowski.
Yes, thank you. We just wanted to let the public and council know that there is a rain advisory out right now. So over the next 24 hours, we may experience some heavy rainfall along with some localized flooding due to the ground already being saturated. So we will have staff out patrolling tomorrow during the day and throughout the night just to make sure that there's no blockages within the ditches and the water can still flow. But just a heads up that there may be some localized flooding that's experienced over that time. The other thing I wanted to update council on was 76 Main Street, the daycare program. So we're having a slight delay in the construction start date. We were originally anticipating the end of February, but due to some material shortages, with the contractor didn't want to mobilize directly to site at that point, but until they had material ready to go, which will be at the end of this month. So I just wanted to let council know that the contractor is not currently out on site, but is expected within the next few weeks.
Thanks, Steve. Mr. Ash.
No updates this week, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Long?
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. CAO.
Just a huge thank you to staff. It's been an interesting 2 weeks, and I think staff has buckled down harder than ever before to get things done. And our fire chief, just an example, that's a huge project to take on time and under budget. He was giving me a hard time about the being under budget. He wanted to know what was going to happen for it, and I'm sure unfortunately in government there's always something, and we'll definitely bring that back to council with respect to how they want to proceed with that. But thank you very much for being under budget on that one, Chief. So, and just to staff and to council and yourself, Mayor, these have been a very interesting 2 weeks, but together, everybody working hard together has been able to move this thing forward.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, on to councilors' remarks. This week, Councilor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to take on to the CAO's response. As a counselor, I've been, like many of us, inundated with the amount of information coming in from residents, different sources. So it's been a lot to take in and a lot to digest, as well as, dealing with our health committee. We meet every 2 weeks, it seems like, with a lot of information there. So it's been a lot. And I feel like if I'm feeling the weight of it, staff must be equally feeling it. So I just wanted to thank staff for the efforts and kind of keeping the momentum and leading a charge in a path forward for us.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Beauregard. Thank you. Councilor Baggy.
Oh, of course I have one, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I did talk to Director of Public Works just a little bit before the meeting. I've had a couple of requests from residents that use walkers that accessing Sunset Park from Schofield Avenue. It's a stone road, and the path that goes through the park is paved about 10 feet wide. Mr. Mayor, I actually measured it today. And I'm asking Steve whether our paving cost or budget this year might be able to extend that path where make it easier for residents when they're walkers and also pushing buggies and stuff. So I just asked them to look into it. I'm not asking for a promise, but I'll ask for that next week.
Mr. Shapowski.
Yes, through your worship. So what we'll do is we'll take a look and see what the cost would be for that. That is something that would be flagged through an accessibility program. So there is a gap there between the asphalt trail to the concrete sidewalk. So it does make sense to connect the two with a hard surface for accessibility purposes alone. So leave that with us. We'll do some investigating just to see where the best alignment would be for something like that and what the overall cost would be to see if we can fit it into our existing trail program that we have right now. Because we do look for accessibility challenges that are out there, and something like this does fit the mark.
Councilor?
Great, perfect, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just one more thing. With the region and all that stuff, I've gotten 21 emails, and everyone is against amalgamation, Mr. Mayor. You got one that's for it. All mine are negativities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You should see my inbox. Way more than 21. But anyways, Councilor Bruno.
Thank you. I had a couple items this week, but Public Works, Steve, your department responded quickly, and much like Councilor Bagu, I was in the high 20s, low 30s in terms of emails on amalgamation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
I'm good to go this week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Danch.
Yeah, a couple little issues. Steve looked after me once again. Thanks so much, Steve, and your guys. Take care.
Thank you. Councilor Hoyle.
To the mayor, staff is taking care of everything as usual for me. I do have to say no to amalgamation. Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Councilor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question through you to Steve. Steve, I know you talked about the flooding and everything. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm sure I know the answer, but I want to hear you say it. The drain ends that go out into the lake, many of them have flap gates. Have we checked that for any ice stopping those flap gates from working?
Yes, through your worship. So we do inspect them. They're inspected on a regular basis every 2 weeks, or when there's a storm coming, whether it's a wind event or a major rain event, staff will go out and they'll check to make sure they're functioning. I know yesterday we were actually out and there was one blockage that we did have on an outlet, so the team was going out today to actually clear that out. So yes.
I knew that's what he was going to say, but I had to ask. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Next is Next is motions. Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Bagu. Whereas the provincial government, oops,
Before you go into your motion.
Yep.
You've got to ask for
oh, yes.
our procedural bylaw.
Sorry, I thought you were going to do all that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, no, I
So-
need you to ask for that first.
This is a motion that I'd like to bring forward this evening to vote on, but we'll need council to accept that that can happen.
Correct.
So I'm asking.
We do that? Perfect. I do have a motion that the clerk has given me. So if I could have Councillors Bodnar and Bagu move that council suspend the rules of procedure pursuant to section 26.3 of the procedural bylaw in order to consider the proposed notice of motion. There is no debate and it's 2/3 majority. All in favor? And it's a majority, so it's unanimous. That's carried. Go ahead, Councillor.
All right. Whereas the provincial government has expressed the desire to reduce the number of municipal councillors in the Niagara region, and whereas the majority of mayors signed a joint letter stating a commitment to building a governance model that is streamlined and transparent to the public, and whereas the timeline for council to enact a bylaw regarding ward structures in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001 has passed for the 2026 election. Therefore, be it resolved that council endorses a 3-ward structure and a council composition of 6 councillors and 1 mayor for the city of Port Colborne as outlined in final option 2 in Appendix A of Report 2025-137, Council Composition and Ward Boundary Review Final Report, and that the city clerk be directed to confirm with the Premier and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing that without provincial intervention, the above changes cannot take place until the 2030 election, and request that these changes be implemented for the 2026 election.
Thank you, Councillor. Questions to this or comments now that it's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any notices of motion this evening? Seeing none, on to bylaws. The first bylaw is for Councillor Beauregard's conflict of interest, so I'll do that one and then we could vote on the balance. So moved by Councillors Bruno and Elliott that bylaw 7440/24/26 be passed and enacted as presented. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Now on the balance, moved by Councillor Beauregard, seconded by Councillor Aquilina. The following bylaws be passed and enacted as presented. Bylaws 7437-2126, 7438-2226, 7439-2326, 7441-2526, 7442-2626. Questions on the bylaws? All in favor? That's carried. We thank those in the gallery tonight for coming and those delegations that spoke. Renee, oh, she left, escorted our consultants out. They did a great job. Thanks those for watching online. We are now adjourned.